Welcome back. You're watching Newsx. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Our big focus this hour. Prime Minister Modi is visiting the National Maritime Heritage Complex in Lothal. Lothal was a key port city of the Indus Valley civilization around 2400 BCE. The National Maritime Heritage Complex, a 4,500 crore rupee project spanning over 400 acres allocated by the Gujarat government, is aiming to preserve and showcase this ancient site's historical significance while promoting tourism and education for future generations. Jatin Raval is joining us for more details on this story. Jatin, Prime Minister Modi currently at Lothal. Take us through these visuals coming in.
जी देखिए, बिल्कुल आपको बता दूं उदय जी की जो प्रधानमंत्री जो है वो गुजरात के दौरे पे है, जिस बार अभी वो भावनगर से सीधा वो हवाई निरीक्षण उन्होंने धोलेरा सर जो सिटी है उसका उन्होंने किया सबसे पहले। उसके बाद फिलहाल जो है वो जो लोथल में जो नेशनल मरीन जो हेरिटेज कॉम्प्लेक्स जो है वो जो प्रगति के निर्माण में जो अभी चल रहा है उसी का जायजा अभी प्रधानमंत्री के द्वारा जो है वो लिया जा रहा है। उनके साथ अधिकारीगण जो है वो भी उनके साथ उपस्थित है। तकरीबन 375 एकड़ में ये कॉम्प्लेक्स जो है वो फैला हुआ है। तकरीबन 4,500 करोड़ रुपए की लागत से ये जो है वो बनने जा रहा है और 375 एकड़ में फैला है। इसमें दुनिया का सबसे ऊंचा लाइट हाउस म्यूजियम जो कि 77 मीटर पर जो है वो बनेगा। 14 इसमें गैलरी रहेगी। तटीय राज्यों का पेविलियन भी इसमें जो है वो 4 थीम पार्क और एक फ्लोटिंग रेस्टोरेंट भी इसमें जो है वो उपलब्ध रहेगा। साथ ही 100 कमरों वाला टेंट सिटी और उसके अलावा रिसोर्ट, ई कार सुविधा और 500 इलेक्ट्रिक गाड़ियों की पार्किंग भी की सुविधा भी इसके अंदर जो है इस जो नेशनल मरीन हेरिटेज जो कॉम्प्लेक्स जो बनने जा रहा है, जिसका अभी प्रधानमंत्री जायजा ले रहे हैं, उसका जो है ये सारी फैसिलिटी इस जगह पर होगी। एशिया का सबसे बड़ा नेशनल मरीन हेरिटेज कॉम्प्लेक्स ये बनने जा रहा है। जी
शुक्रिया जतिन हमारे संग जुड़ने के लिए। Now, during Prime Minister Modi's visit to his home state, he's reviewed the progress of the National Maritime Heritage Complex in Lothal, Ahmedabad. Lothal was once a prominent trading hub of the Indus Valley civilization. It stands as a symbol of India's maritime strength and prosperity. It features the world's largest lighthouse museum, standing 77 meters high with an open gallery of 65 meters, offering a panoramic view of the entire complex. Well, before this, he also inaugurated the Mumbai International Cruise Terminal, a state-of-the-art facility as part of the maritime sector initiatives. The swanky new cruise terminal spans across 415,000 square feet and is equipped with facilities to accommodate around 1 million passengers a year. It would also provide a luxurious halt destination to both domestic and international cruise tourists. The interiors of the cruise terminal are adorned with a ceiling designed like waves, along with blue benches. On one side of the terminal is made of glass panes and it gives a stunning view of the sea. India's journey in establishing maritime infrastructure has been transformative, with significant investments and developments in the recent years. What does this then mean for India's aim of tripling its participation in global sea trade by 2047? Well, joining us live is Major Sudhakarji, geopolitical analyst. Major Sudhakarji, India, of course, slowly transforming its maritime sector with these initiatives, and of course, we've got a glimpse of some of them today itself, cutting across Maharashtra and Gujarat.
Yeah, Uday, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show, and my best compliments to the distinguished co-panelists. Well, there is a lot of depth and meaning behind these kind of visits by the Honorable Prime Minister. He's a man with a very high-end vision and objectivity, looking towards India achieving the status, global status by 2047 or before that. No doubt what you have said is absolutely bang on, I would say. The meaning and the depth that I am trying to indicate is basically he has an aim and ambition to take our export to at least $2 trillion. As in today we are close to around 700 or $800 billion. His aim is to take the export quantum to $2 trillion US dollar by 2030. And to that happen, he's actually put in about 25,000 crores this year in the maritime infrastructure. He's looking at, we have just about 1,500 ships on the vessels. Our dependence on the foreign vessels for export, mindful of the fact 90 to 95% of our export is by the maritime sea lanes. And if that happens, our dependence is just about, around 95% of the vessels we actually hire from the foreign organization. We have a capability of 5%. So the container is another issue. Look at the harbors. We have 13 harbors as against 13 major harbors. China has got 34 and 199 minor. China has got 2,000 plus. So likewise, if you talk about the shipyards, we have just about 27 shipyards. China has got almost about 170 plus shipyards. So if you make a comparative matrix, India has got a long, long way to go to catch up with the maritime infrastructure. That is where actually is going to push the growth in an expeditious manner and take the country up to a $30 trillion economy. That is what the long ambition, and he's playing a long game. I'm very, very happy and delighted to participate in this panel discussion to highlight one issue. Here is a man and a leader of a country who is thinking big. He's taking very significant and leapfrogging from nothing, that is minus point or rather zero, to something substantive in a foreseeable future. Back to you, Uday.
Yes, let me in fact take that to Commodore Anil Jai Singh as well. Commodore Anil Jai Singh, as far as this cruise terminal is concerned, how needed was it for Mumbai? What are the kind of features that make it unique and will help boost the trade and economy?
Well, as General Sudhakarji said, India is essentially a maritime nation. And even the Defense Minister mentioned it in the last Commanders Conference. He said, from being a land-bound country with sea shores, we are now a maritime country with land borders. So that indicates the shift in the thinking from the continental mindset to the maritime mindset. Obviously, we had a continental mindset because, we had these two adversarial neighbors constantly sniping at our heels ever since the time we became independent. So we could never pay attention to the maritime domain, which is more long-term in terms of strategy, in terms of its visible, tangible outputs. But fortunately, now we've started paying attention to the maritime sector. General Sulakar did mention a lot of facts and figures. I won't repeat them. But what I will add is that when India, as it is, India has just about enough port capacity at the moment to cater for its current import-exports. And we are just a 4-point-something trillion economy. So if we really want to become a 30 trillion economy, there will be an exponential increase in the amount of trade, 95%, as he mentioned, which comes over the sea. And more significantly, oil and gas, 80% of that comes over the sea. Our requirements are going to be huge. Now that is as far, so we'll need all the ports, we'll need all the storage capacity, we'll need the harbors, we'll need ships, which also he mentioned. India's share of the global shipbuilding is less than half 0.5%. And we want to become, by 2047, the third largest shipbuilder in the world. And as per the Maritime Vision 2030, we should reach 5% by 2030. That's a bit too ambitious. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that point. So I think we should look more at the Amritkal Vision, Maritime Vision 2047, rather than look at the more short-term 2034, which we barely have 4 years to go. So neither are we going to get new shipyards in that much time, neither are we going to get new ports in that much time. So I don't think anything substantial is going to change in the next 4 years. But then this kind of maritime infrastructure is long-term. It's not something that happens overnight. And therefore, we are looking at 2047. We are looking at the long-term. And coming back to your initial question about the cruise terminal, I think India is a very important maritime tourism hub in the global maritime tourism ecosystem. Unfortunately, we don't have a single cruise terminal in the country. When we were young officers in Bombay, the QE2 used to come once a year to Bombay in the month of February, March. And it used to berth somewhere near where this cruise terminal is going to come up, near the Indira docks. And that used to be a highlight because she used to be there for 3 days, this huge, cruise liner over there. And it used to be a very interesting sight. Even that has stopped now. So we hardly have actually any maritime cruise traffic in the country. Small countries have bigger cruise terminals. So I think that is the need of the hour. The blue economy is going to become very important in the future. Countries are going to turn to the sea for the economic sustenance. And marine tourism is a very, very important part of our blue economy initiatives. Unfortunately, we don't have the wherewithal at the moment. We don't have the infrastructure. So I'm glad that we've started thinking on those lines. Tourism is something in India which we don't get enough of. We don't get enough tourists. Countries like Singapore are getting more tourists than us. So marine tourism is going to become a very important element. India should be a must-stop for every cruise liner that crosses the Indian Ocean. It isn't at the moment. They go to Colombo, they go to Singapore, they go to Dubai, but they don't come to India. And that is something we need to rectify. So I think from that perspective, the cruise terminal is very important. It will take time to develop. We've got to make it on par with any other international cruise terminal. So what happens when a cruise ship comes? The cruise ship generally arrives in the morning. It disembarks its passengers. They go out. They take in the sights of the city. They come back in the evening. And the ship generally weighs anchor at night and goes out to sea to the next port. So generally in cruises, the cruise liners sail at night and berths during the day for the passengers to go and see the cities they are supposed to visit. We don't have anything like that. So even if we were to get a cruise ship, we don't have a system by which we could get those 1,000-1,500 passengers off that cruise ship quickly through customs and immigration out into Bombay, take in the sites, organize trips to historical sites, give them a shopping experience, bring them back and be able to sail out in the evening. We just don't have that wherewithal. And the cruise terminals that I have seen, some tourists don't want to go. Within the cruise terminal, there are resorts, there are swimming pools, there are bars, there are discotheques. So passengers can enjoy themselves even if they choose not to go out. So we've got to look at something like that. We've got to make our cruise terminal really world class.
Okay.
Which I hope it will be.
Absolutely. Mithali Nikore, how important is the maritime sector for our GDP, for our economy? How much does it contribute? How much will efforts like this boost that economy further?
Absolutely, Uday, and I completely agree with my fellow co-panelists that there are two impetus for developing the maritime and the blue economy. The first impetus is linked much more to the freight cargo and freight handling and, sort of global merchandise trade. And the second impetus leads to, is linked with passenger traffic. I actually just finished at my think tank, Decor Associates, a study with the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways on the capacity utilization of the maritime industry and also the participation of women in the maritime industry. And both of these topics are so close to my heart because when we're looking at the development of major ports versus minor ports today in India, we find that most of the traffic continues to be concentrated at the 12 or 15 major ports. However, what we really have now recommended is that a lot of the minor ports, which are, smaller ports, but they are more dispersed along the coastline, need to be developed. And these are already being developed in a PPP mode. Many of them are being developed with companies like Adani, with companies like JSW, which are coming in and taking the responsibility of running the port much more efficiently. The second aspect is really around the dredging and infrastructure requirements. A lot of major ports are struggling with the fact that, they need constant dredging, particularly locations like Kochi. So we have to have a situation where there's continuous investment even in that infrastructure, and we're on the right path on that. Now, the last part really comes around the passenger terminals, which Sir had also spoke about. Actually, in places like Goa and Kochi, now the passenger terminals are being developed and they should be inaugurated by next year. So we are actually starting to see a lot of interest in the passenger traffic that's coming in over there as well. However, how much does this contribute to the GDP today and what is the potential? Today, a contribution of the maritime ecosystem, because we are also including freight, is going up to almost 15% of GDP. Because it's a very large ecosystem. We're talking about import, export of all of the merchandise trade, which is then distributed from the ports. However, the potential for this is to even take it up to 40% of GDP if we include the passenger segment and if we are able to bring in allied services. The biggest important aspect over here is employment generation. A single warehouse at a major port can employ up to 500 or 600 people per year. Now imagine if we are talking about 20-30 major ports, each of them having maybe 40-50 warehouses and all of them being run by private companies in a very efficient manner. This is the kind of employment generation we are talking about. This sector can generate up to 10 million jobs by 2030 even without much additional investment of capital, because that is the way the freight traffic is growing anyway. Secondly, Uday, with the changing, geopolitical dynamics, we're seeing earlier there were, very established supply chains, very established routes in the trade. Today, Every company, every major port is doing its own study to understand what is the optimal route to supply commodity X or Y from market X or Y as the Trump tariffs are coming into effect, and there are different trade deals being negotiated across the world. In such a scenario, the freight movements are increasing. There is a higher demand for aggregation and disaggregation services, and India is well placed within South Asia to position its ports right at the center of it and say, use our logistics facilities over here for your aggregation, disaggregation, and to enter into these supply chains. So I think right now is the best time for India to enter into these new freight supply chains that are emerging.
Okay.
Back to you there.
Let me get in Gautam Mukherjee at this point as well. Gautam Mukherjee, as far as, of course, now, these new developments today are concerned, it's also very important to talk about Lothal. Lothal, Ahmedabad has a very important position in our history as well. And it was a trading hub of the Indus Valley civilization. Who can forget that? Now there are plans to modernize it. Now there are plans to have this, to transform the National Maritime Heritage Complex there, and Prime Minister Modi ensures that these things follow a very strict timeline. Today he reviewed the progress as well.
Well, one is, of course, awareness, and places like the Maritime Complex will go some distance in creating more and more awareness of the possibilities in our country with two coastlines, one on the Arabian Sea, one on the Bay of Bengal, and then the point of it also placed on the Indian Ocean. Now, the other part is the sheer wealth generation, which all the other panelists have already referred to in various ways. One of the most successful ones of late has been the deep sea container terminal, which is one of the biggest in the world. And this has already been off the coast of Kerala. And this is one of the places which is generating a lot of container activity. This is not traffic that goes into the country, but it is huge, massive container ships coming in, containers being swapped from these massive ships into smaller ships, which then go off to their different destinations. Shipbuilding is something that, as Mitali said, with the development of the smaller ports and our collaborations with large shipbuilding yards in Asia, such as Korea and Japan, and maybe to a certain extent China. These are all major shipbuilding powers, and we could increase our ability to build ships of different kinds, apart from the military ones which we are already building. And this will greatly help our fleets, which bring in most of our current cargo, let alone the exponential growth expected in future. There are also a lot of minerals to be explored and mined in our territorial waters, more fisheries. The sky is the limit now that we are beginning to concentrate on exploiting our resources along both coasts and in the Indian Ocean. And this is something that will add a dimension to the growth of the country in a very visible and spectacular way. The other thing that has been happening of late, there has been a lot of reference to how logistics costs about 14% of the cost of export or import, and this is being reduced to 9% with all the infrastructure, road, rail connectivity that is being built. some of it also on the water, in rivers, and along the seas in RO ships. Now, with all this also being integrated into the development along both coastlines, we should see a multiplier effect that is quite spectacular. Uday.
Okay, let me in fact take that across to you as well, Mitali. Once again, our goal is to triple our participation in global sea trade by 2047. Is that something that is looking likely, and how much will that be aided and abetted by what's happened today?
No, absolutely, Uday. I think I have no doubt that our participation in the global freight value chains, is poised to not only double but triple in the next 20 years. And I feel that this is not only a result of, just the investments. Of course, we are making investments, but then so are other countries. I mean, if we look at Singapore port today, the location of the current Singapore port is actually being changed completely to another side of the country so that they can actually capture a lot of value chains that are coming in from the US. However, now with the change in the Trump tariffs, the global flows of sea trade are now a fortune teller's business rather than an economist's business. So we are actually waiting to see where these are going to end up. Now, this gives a huge opportunity. And I've been speaking to a lot of people in the sea trade and the logistics industry, a lot of friends who are freight forwarders, and everybody is going out aggressively to try and shift a lot of even the existing supply chains to Indian ports. Now, what do we need here? We need very quick and timely action, and that's exactly what the government is providing, because our western ports, particularly the Kandla Mundra ports, of course, in Gujarat, which are amongst the most busy ports in the world, and the new ports that are coming up, even the Vadhavan port coming up near, JNPT in Mumbai, all of these are going to be critical to our capture of the supply chains and the work that is going to happen in terms of the movement from the east side to the UAE side, and how those flows take place. So that is going to be a very, very critical supply chain, Singapore to Dubai, and then where India comes into that picture. The second aspect is also that we have to now work a little bit on our eastern ports as well. Particularly Vizag is emerging as a very critical node on the eastern side of India. And again, we need more investments coming in into that, area. But most importantly, I will always say the port I'm most impressed by in this country is Tuticorin. Because Tuticorin, despite being a minor port, and of course, the reason I love it is because 60% of employees in Tuticorin are women. But the reason why it's so efficient is because it handles, things so fast. Amongst the fastest turnaround times for ships is being seen in Tuticorin. So I think right now, the focus of the ministry is also really just on understanding what are the best practices domestically, internationally, trying to apply those so that we can make our infrastructure go much further. One is to invest in infra, which we are doing. But the second is to also bring in the latest technology, as much automation combined with human capital.
Yes,
So
several
that we
steps
can
are already
reduce
being
the
taken.
turnaround time.
Commodore saying what more is needed? What should be the follow-up measures?
To do to get all this going is we've got to make firstly capacity enhancement of our ports and our shipyards, efficiencies, make them more competitive globally. The reason why we don't have shipbuilding is partly because we don't have capacity, but more because we are not competitive with the rest of the world. And shipping is a business. It's not something one is doing for strategic reasons, but for us it's a strategic imperative. Just to give an example, if tomorrow we are blockaded, let's say hypothetically by an enemy, how will our oil come in? If we have ships which belong to India, they will bring that oil in. But no foreign ship owner is going to risk his ship coming into our waters. During the Iran-Iraq war, it was SCI which ensured that we had a continuous stream of tankers coming in despite being attacked during the Iran-Iraq war, of the 8-year war, when the tanker war happened. So we need that. That strategic element is very essential because this is a strategic sector. That's number one. Number two, as I said, is this complete thing about capacity enhancement, efficiencies, competitiveness. The government has to get enabling policies to ensure, to make it attractive for people to invest in this sector. Thirdly, This whole port nomenclature needs to be changed. Major ports and now what we call non-major ports are not really in terms because of the capacities. Government-owned ports are called major ports, non-government-owned ports are called non-major ports. So even if the Kandlas and the Mundras and the Pipavas become many times the size of a government port, it still is a minor port or a non-major port. It's not a major port. So if it becomes a major port, it gets a lot of other benefits. The regulatory mechanism is different, the policy mechanism is different, everything is different. So we need to look at this whole nomenclature, that it should be a port's capacity that should decide whether it's a major port or a non-major port, and not whether it belongs to the government or it belongs to a smaller company or it belongs to a bigger company. That needs to be addressed. Shipbuilding, Mr. Mukherjee mentioned about, the multiplier. Shipbuilding creates a multiplier of 6 for employment in the country. Industrial multiplier of 6. That means for every 1 job in the shipyard, you create 6 jobs outside. That's huge. And while the states, all the maritime states and the state maritime boards are looking at, they've all come out with their own maritime policies. Some of them, need to be relooked with in a more practical manner. Some of them are wish lists. They're not policies. They're not going to act. Those things are never going to happen in the time frame that they envisaged. But obviously, it's nice to put in a policy. So everything needs to be audited. If we are going to have a maritime vision 2030, when are we going to audit? Are we going to audit in 25 to see where we've reached? Are we going to audit in 27 to see where we've reached? Or are we going to wait till 29 to see where we've reached? And what if we've not met those targets? So we have to keep auditing. Milestones have to be very distinct. And this is even more important when you're looking at a 20-year time frame of 2047. You have to have distinct milestones of where you want to be in which year to know whether you'll get where you want to be in 2047. Many of us won't be around at that time to see whether we're even there, Many of the people making the policy won't be there to see whether it's been achieved or not. So I think we need to look at the entire ecosystem. All of us have to put our heads together and make sure that we create a very enabling policy environment, both from the policy perspective and from an implementation perspective.
Okay. Yes, Mijil Sudhakarji.
To give a statement, there is a requirement to understand that the shipbuilding infrastructure and shipbuilding per se is a long-term project. We have not looked at the issue in a holistic manner till now, but better late than never. One. Second, we need to look at it not up to 2047, but it should be preferably looked at a timeline of 2100 or maybe plus. We need to understand as on today, it has to be connected with our defense corridor or the manufacturing bases. As on today, we have 12 independent corridors, and by 2030, we intend enhancing it to 26 corridors. We have 13 major harbors today, like Mitali brought out. And if you compare this with China, they have got 34. We have 199 minor harbors. We need to actually take it up to a figure of 500. China has got 2,000 as of today. But most important of all is the harbors when you talk about, which Mitali I think beautifully covered, is that we need to understand China as on today has got a capacity of 270 million TEU. TEU is a 20-foot equivalent unit.
Yes.
It's a container. I can't explain, that's why the Commodore is smiling. But the fact of the matter is, this is how it is measured. If we have to go in, we have gone in for a port, Vardhaman, that Mitali was alluding to, 23.4 million. So likewise, we have to have many number of Vardhaman ports all around. West Coast has also least. And last but not the least, Uday, we need to actually focus on one issue, that is the shipbuilding yards and the number of vessels. As on today, we have got 1,500 vessels.
We've run out of time, I'm afraid. We'll have to leave it at that. Appreciate you joining us and all our guests with their perspectives on this big story. Let's slip into a short break.